In addition to the Greeks, the Assyrians before them had developed close order drill. Instead of rushing forward in the disorderly mob, with each captain leading his own little knot of fighters, the Greeks had learned to march in ranks and files to the tune of flutes, and to dress their lines so that a company presented a bristling, impenetrable hedge of spears and shields. They may even have marched in step. Seems quite likely. When the Athenian line advanced, the Persian archers loosed their withering blast. The Athenians failed to wither. They plodded ahead, arrows bouncing from their bronze defenses. Then they charged. Once at close quarters, they had their unarmed foes at a grievous disadvantage. Talks about how the Greek center broke. The Persians were able to drive into the Greek center. Then the Persian wings collapsed. The Greek wings came in, and it was a rout. So, let us now go to the Persian attacks back in Star. We know something about the technology of it. We know something about how the battle's going to go. Marathon, 490 BC. On the one side stood a huge empire, heir to the ancient civilizations of the Near East, rich in men and in wealth, which responded to a single willpower. On the other side was a congeries of tiny states, each of which numbered its citizen warriors by hundreds and a few thousands. During the first attack, indeed, Athens stood alone, save for aid from Plataea. For the Spartans, who promised to help against a Persian invasion of Greece proper, could not move until they had completed the festival of Carnae. Even Athens was not unified in its resistance. It had once, in 508, come close to accepting Persian overlordship to protect itself from Sparta. Now, Hippias, the ex-tyrant, accompanied the Persian force and could hope to gain treacherous support from the conservative elements of the city, which were discontented with the Cleisthenic reforms. So he hopes to bring Persian rule in. He hopes to become the dictator again, be reinstalled, on the basis of the aristocrats who were upset about the democratic reforms. As the Persian expedition moved across the Aegean, it sacked the island of Naxos. Eretria was taken after a 6-day siege, thanks to internal treachery, and the captive Eretrians were shipped off to a new home near Susa, 3 months inland from their native Aegean. Then Datis and Artaphernes disembarked their army of cavalry and infantry, perhaps about 20,000 in all, on the plain of Marathon on the east coast of Attica, to give the Pisistratid faction a chance to raise internal revolt. So now we're waiting for Athens to revolt, and we're going to march in there. The Athenians sent off to Sparta their runner Pheidippides, who covered 140 miles and delivered their call for help the next day. I've heard so many different, 140 miles, 26 miles, 77 miles, so I don't know. The Athenian and Plataean army of some 10,000 hoplites marched out to the hills overlooking the plain. Its titular commander was Callimachus, the Polemarch, who presided over the council of 10 generals. But the leading spirit was the general Miltiades, one of the greatest military geniuses Athens ever produced. He lived from 550 to 489 BC. Miltiades persuaded half of his colleagues, including the well-known leader Aristides, that the strategic situation urgently called for an Athenian attack before dissension arose behind them. Tactically, however, the Athenians were hampered by their inferior numbers and lack of cavalry, and dared not come down in the open. So they realized there could be problems back in Athens. We need to get back to the city. And the Persians aren't real anxious to move. They're waiting for the city to erupt. So the Athenians are thinking the city might erupt in revolt. The Persians are waiting for the city to erupt in revolt, and they're sitting here miles from the city staring at each other on the plains of Marathon. The Athenians dare not come down in the open. After several days of waiting, a sudden opportunity came when Ionian soldiers of the Persian force secretly sent word by night that the Persian cavalry was gone. Although our source, Herodotus, is far from clear, it appears that the Persian leaders had grown wary of waiting and were embarking their forces, cavalry first, to sail around to Athens proper. So they were like, alright, let's just go invade Athens itself. trying to get away secretly, right? Sent the cavalry away by cover of night, but a traitor came and told the Athenians. Miltiades at once arrayed the Athenians in a heavy wing formation and weakened center, and at daybreak led the hoplites down to battle. He didn't have enough soldiers. The Persians had a lot, so they have a very, very long line. So he has to match the strength of their line, or else he goes in with a shorter line and just gets surrounded. That won't do. So he has to match the length of their line. Does he have tighter and bigger wings and a weak center, or strong center and weak wings? And he goes for strong wings, and at daybreak Miltiades led the hoplites down to battle. The Persians fought bravely and broke the Athenian center, but they were crushed on the wings by the more heavily armored Greeks. Eventually the Persians broke, and the survivors waded out to embark their ships. Datis and Artaphernes sailed hastily around the Attic promontory to Athens, but Miltiades had swiftly led his army back overland to meet the threat, and the Persian expedition made its way back across the Aegean. It had lost 6,400 people in the battle. The Athenians had lost 192. 6,400 to 192. That's like a 32-to-1 ratio. That's insane. There's a mound still today on the plain of Marathon. The Spartan army, finally free to move, came up a few days after the victory, inspected the battlefield, and praised the Athenians. Good job, guys. Now that's the end of what Starr has to say about Marathon. So the next bit from Starr will be about the next bit of the battle. But there were some things that were just a bit different in Trevor. So we're going to take a bit from Trevor. Now let us remember that Hippias had been exiled and was urging Darius to invade Greece. He wanted to be put back in power in Athens. So we're quoting now from page 227. Darius was in no mood to give up his project of vengeance. Now Darius sent his son-in-law Mardonius to go punish Athens and Eretria, but a large part of his ships were lost in this situation, a stormy point of Athos. Hence the expedition was obliged to return, having fulfilled only half its mission. And Darius didn't care for this. He was not in any mood to give up. He wanted to punish Athens. He wanted to add Greece to his empire. And the exiled Athenian tyrant at his court was active to urge him on. He immediately sent requisitions for ships and transports from Ionia and Phoenician coast cities, and heralds to all the Greek states except Athens and Eretria, demanding earth and water as tokens of their submission. So he wouldn't take earth and water from Greece or Eretria, but he demanded it from the others. Most of them submitted, including Aegina, the commercial enemy of Athens, Argos, the enemy of Sparta, the islands Thessaly and Thebes. Strong minorities in the loyal states were also pro-Persian. Now the states who submitted, the Athenians, later on the Greeks said that they were Medeizers. They were Medeizing, becoming Medes, becoming Persians, because remember the name for Persians is the Medes. They burned Naxos and they sailed up the strait towards Eretria. The city was betrayed by pro-Persian citizens, and strange to say, was unaided by Athens. So Eretria was taken. Where's Eretria on your map? Go ahead and take a look. It was thereupon burned, and the inhabitants were enslaved. The fleet then sailed for the Bay of Marathon, ready to attack the unwalled city of Athens by land and sea. Now they could have landed right in Athens itself, as it said, it doesn't have any city walls, but there's a footnote here. They say they probably landed on Marathon so they could use their cavalry to advantage in the big open plain, and then didn't even end up using their cavalry. So the developments of Greece before 490 were preparing it for the conflict. Sparta had perfected its military machine, crushed its rival Argos in 494, and organized a strong defensive league including most of the Peloponnesus. Athens was developing fast in industry and sea trade, and its new democratic government was becoming firmly established. Themistocles, perhaps the greatest statesman of its brilliant history, had already been elected Archon in 493, and had changed the harbor from Phalerum to the more easily fortified Piraeus, and was already planning for Athenian naval